Hi, I'm Suki. Welcome to Getting Psychic, where you can listen to me use myself to test the theory that anyone can get psychic. Hello and welcome to Getting Psychic. I'm your host Suki and I'm here with Steve Nobel, Ascension Guide and Facilitator. Please do yourself a favor and check out Steve's website, The Soul Matrix. It's dedicated to energy healers, light workers, starseeds, and anyone going through the ascension process right now. His website offers resources in the form of information, ebooks, meditations, and transmissions to help starseeds awaken and get on track with their mission here on the Earth. Steve is the creator of my absolute favorite meditations. He's the author of 6 books, including The Spiritual Entrepreneur and Joy at Work. Steve spent 13 years as the director of the spiritual organization Alternatives in London, before transitioning into his own healing and awakening work. He created Soul Matrix Healing for Starseeds and offers a wealth of free resources, meditations, transmissions, and more that are accessed by over 189,000 subscribers worldwide. He's also a sought-after speaker and regularly leads transformative events both in the UK and internationally. His work focuses on the planetary shift from fear to love and the role of starseeds in this mission. Welcome, Steve.
Yay! Thank you.
Yay! I'm so happy to have you here. Like I mentioned before, I love your meditations, and it's kind of like once you go Steve, you can't go back. And I have a friend that I fight with about who likes your work more. But I'm winning right now because I get to talk to you.
Yay.
So I first discovered your meditations on Insight Timer, and I find them to be very powerful, impactful, and active, which I love. Where do they come from? Are your meditations channeled?
Yeah. I consider myself a channel, but not in the conventional. I mean, channeling's not conventional, is it? But
No.
in the what's the word? Traditional, conventional, the usual way, which is like people going, okay, Archangel Michael's here and he's saying blah, or some entity's here and they want to communicate. I don't do that. What I do is I open myself up to a channel to my higher self, guides, angels, ascended beings, and others. And whoever wants to come through, comes through. So I don't have one. It moves about. It's a bit like, I think I've been trained like a radio station that can move around. So, for example, yesterday I completed something called a higher light decree. Higher light decrees are like clearing statements to the universe. And this decree was concerning slavery, clearing the programming of slavery. Now, I had to sit with it because a lot of stuff come through, and I did sit and think, what are the main elements of this? And so I run it until it's complete. It's almost like a bit like a computer program. It's almost like, run through. Is it complete? No, something's missing. Okay, run through. And it kind of goes a bit like that until it goes, it's done. And it's done is a feeling of completion in my body. It's hard to describe, really. It's a bit like, like the night's done, I'm leaving now. It's
Right. I'm out.
and then I record it. And then today, somehow, another one, because I've written a book called there we are, Spiritual Entrepreneur, which is this one. And so I wrote that a couple of years ago, and I just had the inspiration to do something on it. So I'm just completing an affirmations track based on the work in the book. But then I might get various star races or angelic forces. So I think my training, being a director of this spiritual organization, helped me expand my mind to go, oh, okay, today we're doing Spiritual Entrepreneur, and tomorrow we're doing Arcturians, and we're doing Syrians over there. So it's kind of unusual. I don't know many people do that. And when it first started happening, I used to think, where's this going? It's a bit like, certainly in the beginning, I thought it's like a jigsaw puzzle and someone's thrown all the pieces and I'm just picking them up going, well, I think there was no logical order. There continues to be no real logical order. And now it's kind of, they aggregate into these playlists. So there's inner child playlist, there's a chakra playlist, there's a stellar beings, there's an angelic one, there's a higher self one. So it's now, I see what they're doing is like we're just creating lots of different content and that actually fits into different shelves. But at the beginning, I'm like, oh God, I've trained myself to say yes to it because I realize resistance is not really the way. If I resist the path, it's not really, I did try and resist and it led me into a dark night of the soul. So I'm like, well, you know what? I'm just going to say yes. So yeah. So it's a bit all over the place. I get I get a download, and it feels like or something's happening, or it could come in a second or 5 seconds, or it could come over a period of time. And then I make notes of it, and I quickly make notes, and then I wait for it to complete. And sometimes the completion takes months. I have to leave it. Go, oh well, it's a bit like leave it on the shelf. But often they complete within a day or two. Often,
Wow.
Yeah.
So you kind of start to feel the need to create a decree or a meditation.
Yeah.
And do you go into meditation and tune your knobs and wait for them to fall in line, or
sometimes,
or is it happening when you're active?
Both. Sometimes it's in meditation. A lot of the time I receive it in meditation or in the waking state when I'm waking up from sleep, and I'm like, oh, there's something. Sometimes I get a client present something, and and what I do now. In the early days, I was just a passive receiver. Now I get a client saying, "Hey, have you ever done X?" And I think, oh, that's really useful. I think a lot of people find that useful. So I put it out and go, what about X? And then I'll get a response or I'll get no response. And if I get no response, then it's like, no, we're not interested in this one. Or if I get a response, it will come back. So it's become a two-way thing, which I think communication should be a two-way thing. In the beginning, it was just really like, tell me what thou holy beings want me to do. And now I'm more, hey guys. And I think they want that because I'm here on the ground, and they don't want me just to be a kind of radio station. They want me to have some input, I think. It's a co-creation. Yeah, co-creation.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's been coming up a lot on this podcast about we're working together with them. We're not supposed to beg and worship and,
No. I'm not being irreverent by calling them the holy beings. They kind of are holy beings, but the other aspect of it is that sometimes I fall deeply in love with whoever comes along, and they stay for a week and they go.
Yeah.
And so I've learned to go, well, okay, I can fall in love with them. Maybe they'll come back. Sometimes they do come back. The goddess Isis has been a frequent one come back. Sekhmet, these kind of Egyptian pantheons have come back. And then there's the Atlantean ones that have been, Law of One has been coming recently and it's getting stronger. I'll be doing something more on the Law of One, I think. And so, yeah, it's a love affair that comes and goes.
Amazing. Okay, well, how did you develop such an open communication with your non-physical buddies?
I think I went into intense training from 1991 to about 2016. That intense training meant being a workaholic, not a workaholic, a workshopaholic. So workshopaholic. I was training. I was a growth addict. I was personal. And being a director of alternatives, I helped organize 2,000 author events, which means I've experienced listening to authors in 100 models or more. And I trained in shamanism, in awakening your light body, in psychic surgery. So I've had a broad training, which has enabled me to go, I kind of get, quite quickly what's being presented. So I've had the earthly NLP kind of hypnosis or conversational hypnosis type of training. Coaching, I did a lot. Coaching I liked, actually. Because I like language. And so NLP and language is really important. And so I got that training. And then I got the kind of awakening light body with various channels. I traveled America. Someone called Orin and Darben. I don't know if you've heard of them. They've written, Sanaya Raman wrote a load of books. They've both passed now. Brilliant people. Lazaris, Cryon, Who else? There's one or two others that I've kind of opened to these channels and listened to their material and just Seth. Oh, yes, sorry, Seth. Someone just said, don't forget Seth. I love the Seth material. I don't know if you've come across Seth. Jane Roberts channeled the Seth material, Seth, Seth. And
Uh-huh.
she was really not the first channel, but she was the one that exploded the whole channeling phenomena. And Seth came through as this incredible being in the 1960s, and the information was of incredible depth that I still look at it sometimes and go, "Oh my god!" And I hope he's hang. I've asked Seth, can you hang around because I really like you. So I think him and his buddies, and the great thing about some of these channels, him particularly, Lazarus also, was they got a great sense of humor. And I love that humor, and this humor comes through sometimes, and it's like a wisdom with a kind of gentle humor with it.
Yeah, love that.
To me, is a great sign, really.
Absolutely.
And there are some channels which are a bit more Christ-like. Well, Orin, I mentioned, is very Christ-like, and Darben is more kind of otherworldly, planetary. Which planet are you from? And so I just like all these beings. It's like having this vast training with all these beings and getting to know them in the inner planes and getting to know how they work also, and then doing it my way because I can't do it other people. I've got to do it my own way.
You gotta.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to try to figure out how you got like this.
Okay.
I recognize that you had a very early in life spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
What was your childhood like as it pertains to your current spiritual path?
My childhood was, my parents probably considered me very weird, as a lot of kids are, but I was born in 1957. So it was actually a brilliant time in many ways because there was a lot of interest in UFOs, and there was a whole load of comics coming out of America with the UFO sci-fi. There was Doctor Who started, and it was a phenomenon when Doctor Who began, and then Star Trek. So it was all this post-war explosion of interest. So I rode on all of that, and my parents accepted it until I became a teenager when they didn't accept it. They were like, stop daydreaming was the kind of thing. And then my father kind of said, or he did, maybe he didn't say it, but he certainly telepathically said it to me many times. You're going to get a proper job. The world, you can't daydream. You're going to, and all of this. And so I kind of felt when I was 16, do I continue? I was doing stuff which most of my friends were not doing. Yoga when it was not popular, martial
Wow.
arts when it was not popular, macrobiotics, which some friends thought I was completely bonkers. Macrobiotics?
Like a
It's,
macrobiotic diet?
yeah. It
Yeah,
was not
absolutely.
popular when I started doing it. It was like
No.
fringe, and
Yeah.
it may still be fringe.
Wow.
And I was visiting at the age of 15 spiritual organizations, and they were looking at me. And most of them are like in their 50s, 60s, and I'm in the corner, this 15-year-old kid, and I kind of got the message, come. And someone did say to me, "Come back when you're 21." They kind of like, "You're too young," so I decided to be normal. Bad choice.
Terrible choice.
I went into the city of London, got a job in finance, got married, had 2 kids. My now ex-wife knew I was weird, and she tried to keep me on the straight and narrow, but eventually she couldn't. And I had this awakening in 1991, and there was a kind of explosive awakening, and I was off, and we separated, divorced. My children still think I'm weird, and my grandchildren, I've got 4 granddaughters now. They're like, the younger ones love it, but then the older ones now, like, oh, granddad, God. But they love crystals. They steal my crystals, but apart from that, so I'm a kind of oddity in the family. But they are getting more used to me because I am getting out there. I am successful, and I'm kind of supporting them in what they want to do. I'm not trying to convert them to anything because I don't think I should. You know, if they want to listen to it, they will. I've given them all my books on the shelves, all my grandkids, and one day they'll either think I'm completely bonkers or they'll go, "Oh wow, he's really cooler than we thought." So
Yeah. Yeah. What did your massive spiritual awakening look like in 1991?
okay. So in 1991, January 1991, my father passed, and I was present when he passed. And I had a difficult relationship with him because he was, in a way, the one that was blocking me on my path. He didn't want me to be anything weird or anything. But the strange thing about his passing was my family's reaction to it, particularly my mother's, which was like a moment of shock, and then, oh, let's have a cup of tea and let's get back to being. It was such a weird. It kind of broke something in me, looking at this weird experience of, well, he's passed, and everyone's treating it like, oh, okay, well, how are you? Everyone all right? Kind of really no feeling that was expressed outwardly. It was all
Mm.
hidden, maybe. And then the funeral, which was bizarre, and then and it set me on a path. I walked away from the hospital thinking, the thought was there must be more than life to this, and that kicked off a whole range of synchronicities very quickly. The first one was I wanted to do language lessons. My ex-wife's Portuguese, so I thought, well, let me make an effort to learn Portuguese. So I answered an ad in a newsagent's teacher, and I went there, and she was clearly more than just a language teacher. She had the most strangest apartment and the strangest things in there, the strangest book collection.
Yeah.
And quickly I got more interested in the weird stuff and less interested in the language. And so she taught me tarot, which I learned years ago, and I do for friends. I love tarot. I do it for myself and others, but not professionally. She lent me books on crystal meditation. That was the first thing, crystal meditations. And I'm like, crystals. And I started buying crystals and meditating with them and putting them around me. And it was a slow exposure to and then a whole load of stuff. I found a spiritual teacher. I started doing workshops. I had to hide that I was doing these workshops because my ex-wife would not have liked it.
Mm.
And when she found out, it was almost like I was having an affair.
Yeah.
How dare you do these workshops behind my back? And, and she was really, really unhappy. She's Catholic and not happy with all this stuff. So, and that was the path of, separating, and then just explore. Then I felt free to explore. I went to America. I started learning something called Awakening the Light Body, which was a very in-depth metaphysical course. And every weekend was training in something. And then I became engaged in this organization called Alternatives. I eventually became a director. So for 20 years, I listened to loads of people. I met Eckhart Tolle, had tea with him twice, I think. Julia Cameron, Neil Donald Walsh, Marion Williamson, all of these people on the circuit, which I liked. I met them and had tea with a lot of them. So it's really cool to really be able to organize, see them, meet them, and kind of get a feel for the whole mind, body, spirit field, and kind of, but also the darker elements, which was like, who's not walking their talk, who's on stage doing what they're doing, but off stage doing other weird stuff, and all of that. And then in 2010, I got the call to leave Alternatives, which I resisted. This is the resistance. I was like, no, I'm not leaving. I felt the pull. You've got to leave. It's time to leave. You've got a bigger mission. And I'm like, no, I'm not leaving here. So that sent me into a dark night of the soul, which forced me to leave. And it threw me for several years into this really difficult space where, rather than feeling angels and light beings, I was getting in touch with lower astral and dark beings were chasing me and attacking me. So this was my, Hogwarts dark arts initiation, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt, there's a dark side, which I had no idea about, and I needed to know about to do this work. So there's a light, higher dimensional side, and there's a darker side on the planet, which is shifting out because we're in this kind of shift, global shift. But I needed to know what is shifting out because I was a bit naive to it before.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, why do you think that you had to be exposed to the dark side? But it kind of just makes too much sense. Like you needed to see the big picture.
Yeah. I think if I hadn't been exposed to them, I wouldn't be able to help people who are being affected by them.
Yeah.
It's a bit like I had to go through scarcity programming, a load of it in my family, to understand what abundant programming is. And I had to go through the dark side to really appreciate what the light side is and what they're trying to do. Because, and to be honest, a lot of people enter the spiritual zone, as I did, with no interest in the dark side. I want to make my life better. I want to feel better. I want to feel connected. I don't want to know about the dark side.
Yeah.
But eventually it was decided somewhere that this was part of my training. I didn't want to go into it. I was kicking and screaming. I did not want to go there. And in fact, my intuition was kind of dumbed down before I entered it, because I think my higher self realized if I saw what was coming, I would have avoided it at all costs. So my vision and a lot of the intuitive faculties was switched off.
Oh, wow.
And then I entered it, and then it was rough. It was rough.
For more clarity, what were you doing with your life at that time? Were you hiding under your bed? Did you have a day job? What were you doing while you
I
were...
was the director of the spiritual organization. My life was immersed in the spirituality zone, and my whole family was the organization I worked in. But I was getting called to leave that organization.
Right. But so did you... I got the impression you experienced the dark side after you left, or were you still there?
I was experiencing the dark side just before I left.
Okay.
It started in 2010. And for a year, I was holding on. It was really difficult. I was managing just to do the job. But increasingly, I realized I couldn't do this job. So I resigned and I gave them a year's notice because I realized they needed a year to find someone. So I worked there for 2 years. But I'll give you an example of what happened in the dark night. I was blowing up electrics all around me. That was one thing. I was blowing up internet. I was blowing up lamps. I was blowing up crystals. And I went in the office one day and I blew up the whole internet. I said to them, I think this is me. And they went, no, it's not you. What are you talking about? It's just one of those things. But I've been blowing up things far too regularly for it to be. And so they didn't understand. A friend I met, a healer, she put her hand on my back to give me some healing. She had a big crystal ring on, one of these big things. It blew up. And she went, oh, my ring's blown up. And
What?
yeah, and then another one, it was a gift. Someone gave me a gift of a large crystal, like a huge chunk. I mean, it's not this one, but it was a black tourmaline. But imagine it's like this kind of heart size of fits in your hand. It was a black tourmaline. This is a shungite. I opened it. It blew up into 2 pieces in my hands. She didn't see it. I closed it again, and I just said, thank you. Then she listened to one of my interviews some years later. She said, I didn't realize my crystal blew up. I didn't know she was going to hear it. Anyway, I said, yes, but it was fine. I had 2 lovely pieces and a few little bits here and there. So it was a lot of weird and more weird stuff was going on. And so I realized, that I needed to, and my long-term relationship ended. And my home, which I had for a number of years, ended. So all the anchors of my life ended. And then my intuition was switched off. My guidance was switched off. So I'm like on the high sea, swimming in the rough waters, going, hello, guys, are you there? And no answer. And the very time I felt I needed them was, I was on the cross, literally, and, experienced a kind of crucifixion of a really intense type. And I didn't think I would make it, to be honest. And at the same time, I was being attacked by dark forces in my night dreams very intensely. And I can't explain what an attack feels like, other than, the example would be, they occasionally happen to me still. There's a nightmare where you're processing stuff. Maybe you've watched a movie you shouldn't have watched or something. And then there's a kind of nightmare that people are chasing you, trying to kill you, that feels more than just a dream. It's like this, and I train my unconscious mind to wake me up if it happens, to immediately throw me out so I can clear whatever it is, because they happen occasionally. Actually, still happens. It's part of the job, really, I think. And these forces are dark, lower astral, and you might think, look, if someone's lived a really difficult life, hard life, they've done things they shouldn't have done. On the other side, they may not have gone to the light. They may still be stuck in some dark realm and want to create all kinds of interference, and there's more than that I could say. So there are these beings. Not everyone on the other side is love and light. it's a bit like going to Paris and going, well, everyone in Paris is love and light. No, there are places in Paris where you may not want to go.
Yeah.
Like in London, or New York, or certainly San Francisco. Don't go down that road. Go down there. They're lovely down there. It's a bit like that on the other side as well. In the higher dimensions, everyone's lovely, but everything's vibrational. So if you've lived a low vibrational life, on the other side, if you're caught in a low vibrational reality, you are still there. And, they are the beings that seek to create problems while this world is still ascending, because we're still in the kind of flux of old vibration and new vibration. We're in that mix, really.
Mm-hmm.
We're not completely in the light. The planet's, well, you just read the news, we know we're not completely there. We're heading there.
So what in your life shot you down that path so you could suddenly were having these experiences? Also, I want to know why everything was exploding, but it seems like you needed to experience the other side, and you probably set that up for yourself before you came in, or
did I set it up before this life? No, I don't know if I set it up before this lifetime, but somehow during this lifetime, it was kind of seen at a kind of soul level that this was the optimal path for me to take to do what I'm doing now.
I see, yeah.
If I didn't have that, I probably wouldn't have gone this weird. I'd have been, you know what, I'll stay in this organization. I'll just step sideways, do something. But the 8 years in the dark night forced me to come out of the current,
He's got to get weirder. Let's go.
What happened was I had what some people might call a twin flame or a false twin flame experience, whatever you want to call it. It was a very weird set of experiences. I met someone very intense, probably other lifetime experiences with this person, one of those very intense experiences. I already learned, even if you meet someone you've had other lifetime experiences with, you don't marry them. But this was more intense than just, I've known you before. She was a client, then she stopped being a client, then we became friends. She invited me to Ireland. She was an American, Texas, yeehaw, living in Ireland. She invited me to Ireland. We did a workshop. The intensity was very strong. And then I think afterwards she kind of said to me, she was really drawn to me. The whole thing just started. And then I went to Ireland. We had 3 or 4 days together in Galway. It was kind of magical, but there was also a red light going on in the background. There's this kind of like, hey, this is fun, but there's like a rah rah rah, and I got to the point where I realized, I meditated on it, and I realized, you know what? There's a danger in this. I don't know what the danger is, but I've got to embrace the path. I felt it was a soul call. I'm being called into it, even though part of me was going red light. So I went into it. And then my life just exploded, really. After 3 or 4 months, we parted ways. We parted, let me think, that the timeline may have been several months we parted ways. I can't remember exactly. And then my life went into free fall. It was really, but we had a lot of really strange experiences. I went to America. We went into a cafe together, and she ordered some teas or coffees or something. And I sat at this table, and there was a book on the table, and it was a children's book. And the children's book was called One Heart or something. So I just was waiting. So I opened it, and it was about 2 hearts were one. And then they separated to go on these 2 different paths. And at the end of the book, they came back as one heart together. And it was basically a book talking about the twin flame journey through heaven and hell, joy. And I looked at it, and I showed her when she came back, and I said, look at this. And there was a load of weird experiences apart from that. So I went into the journey, and then boom. And then we both realized, it wasn't going to happen. And I stepped away. She stepped away. I stepped away. I can't remember. And that was 8 years into a very weird place. Yeah.
Wow.
One that I'd signed up to, but honestly, I would not do that again.
Really?
No. When I woke up after 8 years, so if you think 8 years of no connection with the higher self, intuition switched off, difficult. One morning I woke up and a voice came into my mind again, which was that old familiar voice of a guide or something, and said to me, well, now you've got to talk about teach about Starseeds and Ascension. That was the voice. And I was like, it's not like, hello, welcome back. It was just like,
no pleasantries.
Get on with it, and it's very, right. And I just sat with it for 2 weeks because I thought, this is a big ask, and that's when I said earlier, I just say yes to these things now because I decided, you know what, I'm just going to say, even if it's the weirdest thing, I don't want to talk about Starseeds or Ascension, but I decided to, and off I went. And at the beginning, I thought I was winging it. And then after 8 years now, I've kind of got a good grasp of the journey. But for a while, I ran my first workshop and people were like, we love you. And I'm like, really?
Why?
Yeah, why do you love this? Do I know what I'm talking about? I had the kind of imposter syndrome going on in the back of my head.
Oh my gosh.
And so it's very interesting. But now people recognize me in the street. It's like really strange. My son and daughter-in-law were walking along the seafront with me and with my granddaughter, and someone stopped me and were raving, and they looked at my partner going, is he famous? So it was great because the street cred has gone up in my family,
Totally.
And then I've just moved into a new apartment block here, and I think no one knows me here. My neighbor knows me next door. She goes, I listen to your meditation. I'm like, oh God, they're following me everywhere.
Oh my gosh. Well, they are pretty incredible.
Thank you.
Okay. So
did I answer the question?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Okay.
So what does it mean to be an Ascension Guide and Facilitator?
Oh my God, my daughter asked me this because I gave her my business card. It was a big mistake. And I was like, oh, why did I ever show her my business card? Oh dear. She asks me, what are you up to, Dad? And I now say I'm up to no good because, if a 3D person asked me that, I would have a hard time answering it. But if someone is a starseed, who's open, who's listening to it, I'm here as a guide pointing the way. On the path, there are those ahead of me, behind me, in terms of where they're at in this journey in this lifetime. So I'm a bit ahead of a lot of people. I'm in my late 60s. I've experienced a load of stuff. There are starseeds coming in that are kind of new here or just orientating themselves here. I'm just kind of offering guidance. I even get people who are older than me approach me. So, it's not just age. Yeah. But there are people who need help in certain areas that may not know how to navigate those areas. And so, sometimes it's the dark stuff they want help with, or energetic protection, or it's stuff for their spiritual business, or I feel blocked. I don't know what it is. And there's a whole range of things. So it's not one thing, but I'm open to helping people with a whole range of issues, energetic and also practical, because, certainly there are also practical things that can be done in alignment with the energetic that helps. Mm-hmm. For example, if someone's got a business and I look at their website and immediately I know, are they hiding or are they really wanting to be visible? Because it's very common for starseeds to go, I want to be visible, but I'm really hiding for various reasons.
Oh, yeah. That rings a bell.
So I tell them, you're hiding. Why are you hiding? And they'll go, whoa, And sometimes it's other lifetime issues of being persecuted or killed, or it's family conditioning or whatever it is, And so there's those practical things you can see quite quickly if you're looking at a website, or or they may not be doing very well financially, and you can just look practically. Well, there's the energetics, but there are all sorts of practical things you need to do. You can up the ante a little bit with your business for sure. So there are also practical. We're here as physical beings, and there are choices we need to make. There are things we need to say. There are actions we can do, which are all on the practical side. It's not about meditating and putting shields up and batting people away or magnetizing them in. We've got to actually do stuff as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I repeatedly discover on this path, like just recording this podcast, even for the past couple of years, it just says over and over again that it's inextricable that healing is going to be involved.
Yeah.
And you can't just tap into your guides and have a party every day and have telepathic communication and just roll with it. Peeling back the layers involves so much healing, and I'm always like, oh shit, here
Yeah.
we go again. But I've
Yeah.
learned to look at things like, okay, I'm in a healing. A healing is happening, and it's this weird realization that all of the crazy stuff that comes our way, even if it feels horrible, is a gift. Because look what happens on the other side.
Yeah. Everything is, well, not everything comes for our highest good. Some people say everything is for your highest good, everything is perfect. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I think some things can be avoided, but there are lessons and gifts in most situations.
Yeah.
And even if the gift would be, you know what, I'm not going to do that again, is a great
Right.
gift and a great lesson. I'm not going to go down that path again. For some people, they need it because they
Yeah.
keep repeating the same pattern over and over again, and they get one that's really tough. And they're like, okay, I get it. I'm not going to go down that path again. And spirit is like, okay, then we can get on something more juicy. But I
Totally.
think the human being is a layers of an onion.
Yeah.
And at the beginning stages, it's love and light and rainbows and signs and butterflies. But as we go down the journey, there's layers which are like, oh, something's been triggered. What's that? And we may watch a film and it triggers something, or it touch something, or we may decide to step out and it triggers something, or we may meet someone and they activate or trigger something. And it's always a healing, transformational opportunity. And so I'm on the path of daily clearing, healing, opening. I mean, it's just daily for me, really. So everyone I meet, every client, possibly if there's a twang, I use it as, well, why is that twanged? Or what's that film twanged?
Wait,
Star Wars is a great one.
What's a twang?
Oh, something's gone, ooh.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry. I thought the Americans might get twang, but it's something's twanged in my energy field, or something, a button has been pressed.
Gotcha.
A button's been pressed. So if a button's pressed, usually what people do in the 3D world goes, you are terrible. You shouldn't say that. You didn't, blah, blah, blah. But when a button's been pressed, of course, there's a two-way thing. We may not want people to say things or step over our boundaries, but the button's been pressed. That's useful to go, oh, there's a button there. Where does that button lead?
Yeah.
Maybe that button leads to a program of anger, or a program of self-punishment, or a program of self-limitation, or a belief or a decision or an agreement somewhere that is blocking my path. And an example would be very common is religious agreements. They're very common. Vows of obedience to some church. Now, if you're stepping out the path and you've got vows of obedience to some monastic order, there's a conflict in your unconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
Or a vow of poverty and you want to be abundant in this lifetime, there's a conflict. Or a vow of silence and you want to speak your truth, there's a conflict. So these kind of things twang and creates a kind of
a dissonance.
Yeah, a dissonance. And so with the dissonance, we know something in my energy field needs to be looked at and addressed. And, and also something may be adjusted in the outer world. We may need a stronger boundary. We may need to say no. Yes and no are our boundaries, and often people say maybe, which means people come in, and one common lesson for starseeds is what I call empath and narcissist. Starseeds are empathic and open and loving and caring. And not everyone gets this lesson, but if they're too open, too loving, too caring, or even in rescuing mode or sacrifice mode, often what will happen is a narcissist will come in and go, hey, hello. And the empath is kicked about. And that kicking may come about until they realize, you know what, maybe I'm too open. Maybe I'm too trusting. I want to be open and trusting with a boundary. And also maybe I need to look at do I feel I'm worthy? Where's my worthiness, on the Richter scale?
Mm-hmm.
Where's my self-valuing? Where's my self-loving myself? Where's my putting myself first sometimes? In all of this, there's a balance.
Yeah.
Because empaths can be too much. And then a narcissist will come in and they'll get the boxing match for a while.
Yeah.
And what I say to empaths, and it's a very common experience. When I was a kid, I used to watch the old Hammer horror movies. And there was something in there that says, a vampire. In those days, it was kind of sweet. They weren't like today, which is pretty horrible.
Gross.
A vampire in a dark cloak will come, knock on your window, let me in, and don't let the vampire in. Is the lesson? Just don't let them in. Once you open up the door, they're in. So the lesson is, I'm not going to let a narcissist in again. You got to recognize the signs. I had a client years ago. She was, what was it? She was being. There was a boyfriend who turned into a, what do you call it? A stalker.
Oh.
Stalker. And there were warning signs of this right from the beginning, because I saw her for a number of times. And I'm like, there are warning signs, but hey, all right. And it got too big that she realized, I think this guy is a stalker. And she was a film addict. I don't know if you like films, but she is into films. So I don't know if you've seen the film Young Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the film? There's a scene in Young Frankenstein. I know she loves Young Frankenstein. So I said to her, there's a scene in the film Young Frankenstein where the guy with the hump was sent for a brain. And there's a genius brain. And there's the, what is it? The crazy one brain. I'm trying to think what they called it. He drops the genius brain and he brings back the crazy brain. And he put that, and Frankenstein puts it in the monster, and the monster goes crazy. And then afterwards, the scene, that brain, did you bring me back the, So I said to her that scene, and I said, can you tell the difference between, the brain was called, there was a creative one, abnormal brain.
Oh, yeah.
The guy was saying, it's an Abby something. It was abnormal. I said, do you know the difference between a normal guy and an abnormal guy? And she said, no, can't tell the difference. And so if you can't tell the warning signs, you're going to so it's really important to know the warning signs of a narcissist and really read them. And there are certainly, we went through a number of the signs together, and she went, oh, okay, is that a sign? And I went, yes, that's a sign. And so then she hooked up with someone, then married them and had 2 children with them. And that's another story.
Non-narcissist.
He was not abnormal. He had his own issues, but he's not abnormal.
He got the right brain.
Yeah, he's got a kind of more normal brain, you'd say. Yeah.
Okay, so you do a lot of healing and energy work for people, right?
Yeah.
It was really funny in preparing for this interview last night. I went on and started filling out your form.
Oh, okay.
And it was so elaborate, I had to stop and come back to doing other things, because you wanted, I think, my blood type, my firstborn.
Oh no, it wasn't quite that.
But I loved that the form to do a session with you was so elaborate. Do you apply astrology because you wanted birth date, place, and time?
Yeah, there is some astrology. The main areas of it are, do you have a drug problem? Do you have a drink problem? History? Do you have a mental health problem?
Yeah.
And it's not that I won't take people on, but if it's too severe, I may not take them on.
Yeah.
If someone's got a drug problem that's ongoing, I won't take them on, because it creates, whatever's cleared will just come back.
Mm-hmm.
If they've got a mental health problem that's long going, depending on what it is, I mean, depression is those kind of, or my anxiety, that mild, strong anxiety may be different, but there are certain things which, maybe there are other professionals need to address that before I can help.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because it's like really, for example, drugs and alcohol create huge gaps in people's auric field that you can close them up, but next day they're going to be pulled open again. And those kind of people are going to have entities in their field, which is a problem to get rid of,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes time to get rid of them. And they're basically probably call them straight back in afterwards. So, yeah, there are the astrology. Sometimes I will look at, depends, it's dependent. There are other ones where, for example, if someone's been through, what do you call that My Lab, or, those kind of programs where they feel they've been abducted and put through a whole program. And I've had clients like that. Or, for example, I had 1 or 2 people that were, as children, sold into dark forces to use in rituals. and survived. And I asked them, well, why did you survive? How did you survive? And the answer was for these two people, well, if you don't have family, then you're basically not going to survive. But if you've got her father sold her into it. So she was he would drive her to these stately homes and things. Can you imagine that?
No.
And so she had years of witnessing the stuff that you don't really want to witness that goes on in the world. That's part of that's been going on. So those kind of clients I have taken on, again, that's a work because of the challenges they've been through. But most of the people I see are not that level of challenge. They're more, I feel blocked. I've got a difficulty. Can you help me? And yeah, I can mostly help those. And they're the ideal clients. I like those ones, I don't really want to go down the rabbit hole too far. I've been down there myself. Down the sewer. I don't really like going back down the sewer too much,
Yeah.
It's yucky.
That's intense.
Yeah, yucky and intense.
All right. So when you talk about ascension, are you talking about healing alone, or are you talking about a place in time where we ascend to a different place as a species?
What am I talking about?
Why should anyone care about ascension?
Yeah, I know. I didn't care about it. I heard people talking about it when I was at Alternatives. I think, well, who cares really? Who cares if 2012 is important or not? I didn't care.
Yeah.
I thought maybe they're making it up. There's a lot of conflicting things about it. But in hindsight, what I see Ascension is now that and what I understand is that the decision has been made at a planetary level and also a human level to ascend. And what that means is this planet has been dark for thousands of years. And you just read the history. I mean, I've been a follower of history, really like history. Our history is dark, heavy. Wars, slavery. It's still dark. The planet is still quite dark. What the planet is doing now is shifting in vibration. And part of the shift is purging. And so the planet itself is going through all kinds of purging. Storms. In America, you've had a lot of weird stuff. Part of that, not all of it, part of it is purging. Gaia is purging old karma. Part of it is what I would say is interference by dark forces using various weather and weird weaponry. So there's the dark forces and there's nature purging. So there's nature shifting. Nature wants to purge the old grid of the earth, which is full of wars and dark karma. If you can imagine all the battles and stuff that's gone on, the earth has absorbed all of that stuff. Humanity's shifting as well, so which means there's a lot of new, old souls incarnating, a lot of starseeds incarnating, increasing rate. Young souls, which are the younger adolescent souls, which you can see George W. Bush. If you look at him, young soul. There are a lot of young souls like yeehaw. The ones who go jihad, let me sign up on the dotted line. These are the kind of guys which are like, they're new, they're up for the adventure, they're up for stuff that a lot of the older souls would go, you know what, I'm not going into that. It's part of their soul's evolutionary journey, and the soul has its own evolutionary journey. They're going to go somewhere else eventually. So in a while, this planet will be a place for old souls, a higher consciousness. They're coming in an increasing rate. It's also an age where we've got the age of Aquarius birthing in. Got this the internet, all these new technologies are exploding and expanding. So humanity is also heading for a kind of more spiritual age eventually, further down the line. We're talking 2030 is a big shift. 2050 is a big shift. 2070, I imagine we're going to be completely in it. So it takes a while to go into. If you're talking about shifting a planet from a dark space of thousands of years, it takes a century at least. So, people want it tomorrow. They want it the weekend, but it's not going to happen. We're in a slow shift out. So we're heading for a spiritual planet. We're heading for a technological planet. We're not reversing back to matriarchy or people in caves and small communities growing the carrots. We are heading for this much more technological age, but the technology increasingly will be in alignment with the planet. It won't be against, because a lot of 3D technologies are against the planet. They're harming the planet. but increasingly, one of the big shifts I think is on the planet, which is already coming, is the shift into fission, nuclear fission technology. It's already, scientists are already talking about it, where it's nuclear reaction at room temperature. And there are already scientists experimenting with this and doing this. There will be technology. A lot of the technology is already invented, but it's kind of hidden, I believe, by, you can call shadow government or secret government. You know, a lot of the spaceships heading up to the moon are not alien. They are secret government. There's whistleblowers coming out talking about this. So the technology is there, so that the planet is shifting, and eventually a lot of that technology will be more open, and there will be contact eventually with other extraterrestrial races. When that is, it's hard to tell, but it's all vibrational. When our vibration shifts high enough,
Mm-hmm.
then we'll be able to meet them. And also there are races in the inner earth dimension. You know, people call them fairy races, or cities under the earth, Telos, under Shasta, these kind of cities. Those kind of beings are making contact with certain individuals, but it won't be a kind of, hey, hello, here we are, until humanity reaches. It's all everything's vibration.
Okay, so why, whenever anyone talks about ascension, is it sort of giving the impression that it's just around the corner, things are changing so fast, I feel so weird, times, there's this sort of like frantic excitement
Well,
whenever everyone talks about it? How do you take that?
in terms of marketing, it's much more exciting to say, next weekend there's a big solar flash, and it's happening, and it creates a kind of intense feeling. And there's people getting into fear about it. And I've had people going, oh my God, this ascension teacher's saying if I don't do this course, my ascension timeline will be off. There's a lot of people doing some dodgy stuff, with it.
Yeah, no.
There's a kind of franticness, there's an urgency, there's a fear that comes in. To be honest, I just say to people, it's happening, embrace it. It is getting more intense. We are in a more intense period, but there's no reason to be afraid, or, it's not just around the corner. I don't see a solar flash happening next weekend. It's, the solar flashes are ongoing and just growing in intent. The solar activity is ongoing. The Schumann resonance is increasing ongoingly.
Mm-hmm.
We have to learn to live in an increasingly intense world.
Mm-hmm.
The last 6 months to me have been more intense in my own life than before. And I feel it's because the energies have stepped up. But if you're not that sensitive, you might say, well, I don't feel anything. But the ones who are sensitive, it's getting more and more, which means my life has shifted in the last 6 months quite strongly.
Yes.
I've moved home, shifted in all kinds of relationships. Close relationships have shifted. My own work is shifting. I get these impulses. Don't do so much of that now. You're going to start doing this. Mm-hmm. So 3 or 4 weeks ago, I got a real strong download. I got to start offering courses. And I'm like, this is new. All right, I haven't done that before. So I've created 2 courses. And I think I've got a feeling I'll be doing a lot more. They'll be downloading less. I'll be doing the higgledy-piggledy for the general channel, but I'll be doing a course. So it's making me focus. I go, okay, I quite like having a focus, actually. So that's more and more that's happening. I've got one that's coming online tomorrow. It's Becoming Your Higher Self. That's going out tomorrow. That's a kind of 9 meditation track course.
Amazing.
For people who want to go into that more.
So yeah. That resonates, what you just said. Like, I choose to not freak out about solar flares or get like, oh, it's just around the corner. Like, I'm just going to plug away and do what I'm doing. But I absolutely relate to what you described with the last 6 months being kind of crazy. But can you experience ascension? People talk about ascension symptoms. I don't know. But can you experience ascension without having a clue about the concept?
Yeah, well, you'll start getting the symptoms, and that will make you start going, physically, people start thinking there's something wrong with me. They might have chest pains or weird buzzing or disorientation or feeling ungrounded, or they might have emotions coming up, being a bit up and down, or they might, the mind might start going, revving up. And so they might start looking maybe for medical advice. They might see their doctor and go, "Hey, have I got a benign tumor in my brain and all this stuff, or is my heart okay?" And then they might start looking, if they are spiritually open, to, maybe there's something else going on. And then they might latch on to this kind of material. So eventually, the whole thing of the ascension symptoms might force them. Their life might go through severe shifts, and they might go, "What's going on? What's happening?" It's designed to wake people up. If you're in a sleep, there's going to be a few knocks that go, "Wake up, wake up, wake up." And eventually you will have to wake up and start looking. Everyone on the spiritual path, I'm sure you included, Suki, are on the path because we've suffered some kind of wounding, harm, difficulty, rejection. We're not doing it because we're sitting on the beach going, "Hey, I'm drinking pina coladas. Hey, I've got two brothers." I did therapy before I really started that was the other thing. Going into therapy, I was thinking something I need to explore. What's going on? My two brothers are like, "Why don't you just enjoy life? What's the problem?" They're like,
We're fine.
We're fine. That's the thing with the kind of younger souls. They're fine. The older ones are processing all the ancestral stuff, all the other lifetime stuff. And so they're not fine. And so they will need to find some help. So I've been through 13 years of therapy. Great. It was fabulous. Slow, but it helped me shine a light inside, and then I found the spiritual path, and I was like, ditched the therapy and dived into the spiritual path. And that helped me immensely. Actually. Yeah. So, cool. We find the path. We do find the path through desperation and inspiration, and a mixture of both.
Yeah, so true.
Usually, if we're totally happy, we go, "I'm fine. I don't need the path."
Why would you bother?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because it's really weird in here. Like, why would you bother?
Yeah.
Also, the risk of judgment, all of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so when did ETs enter the equation, Steve?
For me, well, back in the 90s, when I started doing the Awakening Light Body and channeling, I realized that one of the channels was not of this planet. And they talked about other dimensions and stuff. Then after the dark night of the soul, I began to wake up more to looking at all of these things and going, well, who are they then? Who are these beings? Who's out there?
Yeah.
And I got the feeling that for me, the connection was strongest with the Pleiadians, who I feel have got a very strong, close connection to the Earth. And I feel every human being has got some Pleiadian DNA connection, whether their soul has got any connection. So the body has been seeded with ET material. But they also say the Earth is a library. It's not just Pleiadian. There's a mixture of stuff that's coming. We're kind of, this Garden of Eden is a mixture of experimentation that's gone on to produce this human race we've got now. But the soul is different. The soul may have had lifetimes in Pleiades, lifetimes in Sirius, lifetimes in Arcturus, lifetimes in Andromeda, and starseeds are wanderer souls. People go, "Where am I from?" And it takes time because you're a wanderer soul. Imagine you've been around the world, but you live in California, but you've traveled all the continents. It takes a while to go, "You know what? California's my home, but I've traveled all of these and some of them I resonate with more strongly than others."
Yeah.
And for me, Andromeda is a very strong but very distant home. Lyra is a strong but distant home. Sirius is it's almost like a progression for me. Andromeda, Lyra, and the Lyrans were really the founder races of a lot of people in our galaxy. Have been founded by the Lyrans. They're colonists, really colonizing. Sirius, I feel very connected to Sirius because particularly in Sirius, there are some ascension schools on Sirius where a lot of spiritual masters reside. I think Sirius is a home. So, for example, Jesus Christ, the Avatar, came through that school.
Why do you say Jesus Christ, the Avatar?
Well, I consider him an avatar soul. And what I mean by the avatar is there are a few souls. Some souls are teacher souls, and some souls are avatar souls. And these avatar souls are basically, it's a very specialized mission. So he came in with a mission to plant a seed of light in a very dark world.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine Palestine, Roman occupied Palestine, not like with all the kind of frictions between, the Jewish guys who were revolting against the Romans, and they had all these schisms going on. And all of that, he planted a seed of light that's only really flowering now. He talked about the age of Aquarius. If you read the Bible, he talked about the second coming. The second coming is now this group awakening. So he's an avatar soul. Avatar souls go into very dark places, dark systems. And, me and you would not go into those systems.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that mission to, I would not have a mission like Jesus the Christ. It's a very intense mission. Getting crucified and
no
all
kidding.
That stuff.
Is it interchangeable with Ascended Master for you, or is that different?
It's different. I think some souls are master souls, and for me, there are a number of master souls, and they come in different ages. So Buddha was an avatar soul for me. Christ was an avatar soul for me. Probably Krishna, I believe, was an avatar soul. They are very, very strong souls that come in, and basically religions are formed around them because their message is so intense and so strong, and so revolutionary. They're all revolutionaries. Like the Buddha was a revolutionary. He broke the caste system in India, which is something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Christ came into Judaism to break a very strong system. And if you know many Jews, you know how strong that system is, and all of the early Christians were Jews. They kind of broke away. It takes a particular soul to be able to do that and create a new message and a new religion. Now, I've listened to hundreds and hundreds of authors and spiritual teachers. None of them are avatar souls. None of them will have a whole thing form around them. None of them. It takes a particular intense vibration. And these avatar souls are at such a high vibration that, for example, if you read about Jesus touching people and people being healed or raising the dead, these are not normal vibrational souls, really. Yeah. This is just my take on it. And so these kind of souls come through Sirius, the star system of Sirius. So Sirius has got a very strong connection to the Earth. There are very strong connections with Sirius to the Atlantean civilization and the Egyptian civilization pyramids, and some of these pyramids around the world with 100-ton boulders at the top of a mountain. They're not rolled up there on, slaves pulling them up, Machu Picchu. They're not doing that. There's technologies involved which are beyond that. And so there's, but when the Earth started falling in vibration after Atlantis and then in Egypt as well, they left. They basically go, you know what? We're out of here. We'll come back when the planet starts rising again, which is now. So they're coming back. They're going. I don't know if you ever saw The Fifth Element, that film with what's his name? Bruce, where they said we're leaving and taking all that stuff from. Do you remember those big fat alien bods came, took everything, and they said we'll bring it back when the time's needed. I mean, it's not exactly like that film, but a lot of the stuff was removed. A lot of the records was hidden, like Edgar Cayce, brilliant Edgar Cayce, amazing. The Sleeping Prophet, that guy. Mm-hmm. He said the Atlantean Hall of Records is underneath the Sphinx, and it will be discovered, and then make people realize that Atlantis is not a fable; it's actually a real civilization. The pyramids were built by Atlantean beings. These beings came in. The interesting thing about the pyramids is over time, the actual ability to build them got worse. Usually it gets better. It got worse. So the earlier the pyramids is better designed. The language and the mythology sprang out of nowhere. Nobody knows how it happened. The whole rich mythology, medicine, all embalmment, all of it came out of nowhere. There was no involvement of it. Atlanteans came and did that. If any of your listeners are interested in Atlantis, then I do recommend the Netflix series Ancient Apocalypse by Graham Hancock. First, series 1. He shows brilliantly about Atlantis. It's not a legend. There's loads of evidence for it. But you just need to look for it and you'll find it. So
noted. Okay, so you made a transmission called Reversing Dark ET Experimentation Transmission. What's up with that? Where'd that come from?
Okay, where did that one come from? No, well, I think only people will be called to that if they feel they've had the experience of it. And there are some people that feel they've been experimented on, not just in this lifetime, but other lifetimes. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember now. I had a client, and in the client session, we went somewhere. And in the client session, this person was captured in galactic war and tortured and mind controlled and experimented on. And then that was like, okay. And then I asked, well, what about it? And then I got the download.
Got it.
For anyone who's had, and it's, people have had experimentate in these galactic wars. They weren't just throwing you in a prison. They would do stuff, they would do mind control and all kinds of weird shit on you.
Yeah. All right. So we should probably button it up, but if you could offer one decree or invocation for listeners, you can just refer them to a starting point from your work.
So if you go to my YouTube channel, Steve Nobel, you'll find loads of playlists, and it's probably easier. All of the jigsaw puzzle goes into playlists. Inner child, energetic protection, chakras. So I recommend you look at the playlists and go soul mission. Where am I called? Yeah. And then just go there.
Okay, so let's do a trick. See if you get any guidance or intuition on a recommendation for my audience.
For your audience?
Yep.
Okay. The recommendation for your audience, I'm just... okay. Is one called The Law of One. Highlight decree, The Law of One. The Law of One is a system of practice and belief that was practiced in Atlantis. So since we've been talking about Atlantis, it's kind of there. And when I tuned in, it kept coming back. So the Law of One is something that will be followed again on this earth plane, but we're not there yet. One creator, one unity consciousness, one humanity, one... if I hurt somebody else, I hurt myself, etc., etc. The Law of One. Check out the Law of One. So if anybody's got Atlantean connections, that Law of One will trigger it. So.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, I will leave links to all of your stuff in the show notes, and I can't wait for everyone to start exploring your work because you guys are going to freak out.
Yeehaw!
It's very prolific. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thanks, Suki. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as we did. Be sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss a new episode. If you liked today's episode, please consider leaving a review to help the other psychics find their way here.